Hi everyone. As you might know, we don't get any sort of funding from any wealthy benefactors, academic institutions, governments, or political parties. Our work is funded by you, our listeners and readers on Patreon. In return, our supporters on Patreon get access to exclusive content and benefits like ad-free episodes, bonus podcast episodes, and 2 exclusive Patreon-only podcast series, Fireside Chats and Radical Reads. So here's a little preview of our latest Patreon-only episode. You can join us, help support our work, and listen to the full episode today at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes.
As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, 1,000,000 darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts grey are brightened by the beauty sun discloses, and the people here are singing bread and roses, bread and roses.
All right, hi everyone. I'm here with Michael Richmond, author of the book Fractured, and we're here to discuss David Baddiel's Jews Don't Count. And yeah, I don't know if Michael, if you wanted to introduce yourself at all, anyway, anything beyond that.
I guess it's probably useful to say that we're both Jewish, and that's partly why we're interested in this book. And I've kind of done some writing around sort of anti-Semitism and philo-Semitism in recent years. And yeah, I think we were both just kind of sufficiently, we recognize that the book came out a few years ago now, but we're kind of sufficiently annoyed by it that we finally managed to get together to talk about it.
It is quite an annoying book.
His annoyingness as a man just jumps off the page.
Yeah. I did say in the lead up to this that I wanted to try and be even-handed, but we've jumped straight into just how annoying he is. But before we get on to how annoying he is, can we maybe, I don't know if you want to say something, maybe anything that you think about the book that might be positive or anything good that you can say about the book?
Yeah. It's tough because I think what's most damaging about the book is that it's kind of become this kind of go-to book for a particular kind of reaction to like recent debates around anti-Semitism and Jewishness. And in that sense, I think probably quite a lot of people have read it and thought, right, this is the right opinion to have, and in that sense, it's really damaging because a lot of the people that have read it aren't people who have engaged in any way in any of these debates and are just thinking, all right, here, this is a kind of stupid man's intellectual who kind of comes out with this kind of take that's quite high profile, and people can just kind of swallow it whole and kind of take it on as their kind of answer to what's been happening with recent debates. And so, having said that, like if you actually read it, from our point of view in terms of like knowing a bit more, like having lived some of these kind of debates in these kind of really kind of annoying, trying kind of times, we might be able to experience some of the book as being like, okay, yeah, like anti-Semitism is a problem, and like Jewish culture and Jewish history aren't that well known in Britain. There's those kind of small aspects of the points that he's making are valid, and therefore it just seems like even more of a kind of missed opportunity to like speak about them in a more like historicized and kind of contextualized way, rather than this kind of like really quite reactionary kind of polemic that he kind of used it for. I don't know how even-handed that was. I know that I'm supposed to be even-handed.
No, I did want to say that was that was the good bit that you can say about the book, and from here it's all downhill. yeah. So it's a really damaging book. That's the positive. That's the positive statement about it. I guess.
What do you think? Do you think it? Am I being unfair?
Well, no. I think you're right, basically. But the topic that he's brought up is a really interesting one. Issue of there's the issue of Jewishness in its relationship to whiteness, the issue of anti-Semitism and its relationship to other forms of racism. these are kind of interesting topics for discussion.
Yeah, important. They're important,
really important.
Important questions. Yeah,
But he does approach them in perhaps the stupidest way imaginable. I was talking to someone about it yesterday, and we were saying, like, it's the equivalent of someone who wants to write about what the weather's been like this week and what the weather's going to be like next week, and just looking out their window and that being the extent of what they talk about. I mean, it's just so kind of like, so, oh, right, yeah, that's it. So what I can immediately see here, that's that. I don't think I need to, go any deeper into that. So, but basically, the short version is that there's not much good about this book. I mean, I think the style of it is this kind of like this long form essay, essentially, which I think
what is it?
Yeah.
It's not clear what it is. It's almost like a kind of like, what's it called in like Shakespeare? It's like a soliloquy. It's like this one long soliloquy, but it's like the kind of feeling of it is just that it's like wah, wah. Like that's the kind of tone of the soliloquy. Is like, everyone should think the same things as me, and everyone should stop being mean to me on Twitter. Like, this is the kind of vibe.
I mean, I think that's it. I think because that's because it's got the sort of the long form essay style of you can imagine like Camus, like when he writes The Rebel, you know what I mean, or like one of Orwell's long form essays, or James Baldwin or something like that. But then the thing is that it's just so daft. It's like there's no intellectual heft to it at all. Like I think there's hardly any reference to any other book on the topic. Or
I would like to talk to you about referencing. Exactly. I've done some very important research, right? While I was reading the book, I counted that he references 30 tweets in the book, right? And he doesn't just reference tweets, he reproduces them with the image from Twitter of the tweets, right? Out of the 30 tweets, 9 of them are his own tweets, right? So basically, the whole book is just him doing a self-retweet of his own kind of really bad opinions and bad tweets. And I kind of thought about this kind of like phenomenon of like referencing yourself. And it reminded me of when I did a Capital reading group. Like, and I just I realized that basically this man, I've never seen a Jew reference himself so much since I read Capital Volume 1. Like this is Karl Marx levels of like, I'm right, read my previous work. I mean, he even quotes one of his novels at length as if that's like...
This was it. That was actually one bit where I was like, oh, well, you know what? This is a potentially interesting point. What's this book that he's... And then I went back and read the paragraph again. I was like, oh no, he's just talking about one of his own novels. It's not research. It's not research. Like he's just constantly been like, oh yeah, this is all, you see this all on social media. I see many posts these days. It's like, that's not research. That's not, it's just like, I've seen tweets. It's not, that's not a study.
That's kind of like, I think, indicative of like his overall focus of the book, which is he doesn't go into great detail about why he's focusing on what is basically this kind of very indeterminate blob that he calls progressives, which is just like everything from like liberals to like centrist conservatives to like all different types of British institutions to
as we'll get onto this later, but one of the examples he gives is actually not of a liberal, or he is actually of a Nazi collaborator, but somehow this is pinned on the left in some way. But I mean, I think that's really kind of key, and I think part of this issue is that there is no intellectual or methodological rigor to it, and it's like you say, like he's quoting his own tweets, he's quoting his own novels, and like there's
just
the,
anecdotes from his own life, you
yeah,
know.
and
Basically, I feel sorry
exactly.
for the guy because a lot of the time he's quoting things that have happened where his friends have been racist. It's like, all right, mate, if your friends are being racist to you, that's not like some
Yeah,
representative of like the left or like progressives. That means that you should choose better friends. Like,
you've got racist friends. I'm really
yeah,
sorry
man.
to I'm really sorry to hear that. But there's this. I mean, like as I was reading it, like I got that. There's that line from there's a British sitcom called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, where the main character is this author Garth Marenghi, and he says he says the line, "I'm actually one of the few authors who's written more books than they've read." And like, and that was as I was reading this book, I was like, "This is Garth Marenghi." You know what I mean? This is it. It's like there's no desire to look into anything beyond, like you say, his own tweets, his own books, and like, his interactions with,
Yeah,
you know,
we probably
friends of
know how many
his.
books he's written because he probably references all of them.
Yeah, yeah. I sort of cut you off there, but like, I think you talk about this kind of indeterminate blob that he's kind of aiming his ire towards. This comes to basically the central claim of his book, which is basically that anti-Semitism is not taken as seriously as other forms of racism. So for me, I mean, I think immediately on the face of it, anyone who's faced any other form of racism apart from anti-Semitism would probably raise their eyebrow at that suggestion. But actually, like you say, he's limiting, or he's claiming to limit his discussion to just those on the left, which he describes in this really, really vague, indeterminate way. I don't know if you want to say a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite facile, like the way that he does it. Like when he describes like the left, it's almost like what was that? There was like a TV show in the 80s that became this kind of like reference point for like kind of British left wing, where the guy wears the beret and he's called like Wolfie
What
or
is it?
something.
Citizen Smith,
Yeah,
is it? Yeah.
something like that. It's that kind of like, it's a kind of liberal way of talking about leftist politics. It's like not understanding any part of any of the ideas or history of the left, but it's kind of like he describes the left as being fighty, that it's like the left like is supposed to care about injustice, but it doesn't when it comes to Jews. And there's this thing that he calls like the sacred circle, which is like these are the kind of like minoritized or oppressed groups that are included in the people that the left fights for. So then, the left is like not anyone who's from those groups. It's just like, I guess, white, indeterminate white people on the left who care about certain minorities but don't care about Jews. And his kind of analysis of like left anti-Semitism, which we'll probably discuss it more, but like throughout these last few years, there's been a lot of discussion about anti-Semitism on the left, and it's kind of an exhausted topic. It's like you'd have to like wade through this whole kind of like morass of like bad faith to have any kind of like useful conversation on it. But it's like it's something that has a history, that exists. There are like histories of exclusion and of conspiracy type racism on the left towards Jews, but like his kind of presentation of it is just completely like puerile. It's just like the left doesn't care about Jews because they think that Jews are all powerful and are all kind of capitalists and blah blah blah. And it's like there's no engagement whatsoever with like any kind of history, any kind of like of the thought of like Jewish leftists, Jewish Marxists, Jewish anarchists struggles over the centuries of like working class Jewish culture. There's none of that. It's just this kind of like one line thing of like this is why Jews don't count for the left. And it's just like,
well, this is actually what's funny. Towards the end of the book, he goes, the response to Corbyn's Labour mobilized British Jews for the first time in history or something like that. And you're just like, bruv, are you out of your mind? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, Jews in Britain, but not just in Britain, you know, Jews in general in the, you know, in the diaspora are some of the most politically mobilized people, you know, ever. Like, you know, I mean, it's crazy. Like, you know, you know, in Britain, you just need to go to, like, you know, you need to talk about, I don't know, you know, the old, like, you know, communists in East London. You know, they used to describe like East London as a little Moscow, you know, because it was so mobilized with the old kind of Jewish trade unions and, like, you know,
There's a reason.
in
There's a
the,
reason
you know,
why the British ruling class talked about kind of anarchism and terrorism. Like the reason why they racialized it as Jews is not just because of their racism. It's because there was loads of Jewish anarchists
yeah,
who
yeah, like
who were
Jewish
very active.
Bolshevism and, like, yeah, you know,
Yeah,
it's like it was just crazy to, like, you was like, what do you mean? Like, you're that, you know, in 2017, or that was the first time that Jews had ever mobile. It's like Cable Street, you know,
yeah.
like the 43 group. Like, there's so many things that, like, so many times that Jews have organized politically, and he just doesn't mention it. He just has, and again,
Oh yeah. The first
it's
explicit
exactly, yeah.
Jewish trade union was founded in London in like the 1870s or something. Like you've
You
got
know,
massive history of like tailors strikes and solidarity and within those workers' struggles in the East End. Like it's
yeah,
just, I
yeah,
mean, do you know what it reminds me of? Like when he says like for the first time, it's just like this kind of classic ahistorical void of
mm,
liberalism. It reminds me of, like, you know, when there were kind of the kind of pro EU marches that would happen around kind of the Brexit time,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you'd have like painfully middle class people kind of holding up signs along the lines of like, why did you make me come out here and leave my house, like, or like, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I'm not usually the type to do this kind of person. It's like this doesn't speak to like the actual history of like Jewish struggle or Jews involved in struggle in Britain. This speaks to like Baddiel and lots of other Jews in the current period being demobilized or being kind of like, you know, suddenly deciding, oh, we're going to have to like do protest things. So
mm,
you had that absolutely bizarre kind of protest in like whenever it was 2018 or 2019, when you had like, you know, board of deputies and various other like kind of Jewish leadership organizations having like a kind of sort of supposedly a protest, but it was like, how do you have a protest if the entire kind of state is on your side? Like everyone's, all these Tory politicians, all the
yeah,
government
yeah,
ministers are all there, like with their like like kind of perfectly kind of like laminated signs
yeah,
and stuff
yeah,
like this. And it's just like that's what it reminded me of. It's like this is a kind of, this is the first time that we're doing this because I have no idea what history is.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, and yeah, and I think, like, you know, so as part of his kind of this claim that he's making about anti-Semitism not being taken as seriously as other forms of racism, and specifically on the left, you know, he says in this one part of the book, at the beginning, he says that what he's trying to do is, and so this is just to quote him, that he's trying to pinpoint something key about modern anti-Semitism, which is the left's confusion over it. And so, you know, I read that and I was like, okay, you know, does that make, yeah? Because in a way, he's making it more precise. He's being a bit more precise about what he's talking about. So does that make it kind of better or sharper? This analysis, and it's like, and I was like, no, actually, that makes it even stupider, because it's just like, you know, I was like there, and it's like, you know, so wait, so you're telling me that the key to modern anti-Semitism, you know, the crucial thing to anti-Semitism today is the left's confusion over it. And you're just like, well, you know, at the moment, we have, like, you know, political discourses around kind of cultural Marxism and great replacement theory and Soros, you know, Soros money, and, like, you know, have the far right kind of spreading these kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, all the while kind of still supporting Israel, obviously. and then so there's that, and that sort of seems quite significant in terms of modern anti-Semitism. But then also, so this book is published in 2021, and at that point, the Tories had been in government for over a decade. The far right were on the rise, and still are on the rise everywhere. You know what I mean? It's and so I'm kind of, I'm just there and thinking, like, I'm not sure that in that context the left is key to anything. You know what I mean?
As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day.
That brings us to the end of this episode preview. To listen to the full thing and help support our work researching and promoting people's history, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes.